and welcome to geekyquel News. I know this is a different format, and I know it's been a while since you heard my voice, and I do apologize for leaving you without a dope beat to step to, but life have been lifing for you, girl. Now, I know that normally I do this with my best friend Akira. Akira and I have been busy, um, and things happen. Unfortunately for me, just for myself, I got laid off from my job and I've been job hunting and going on interviews, which is one of the reasons why you haven't heard from me and Akira from a while. Akira has been busy with work and projects of her own, and Geeky Cal News is just going to be a solo, just me and you chatting about the news that's happening in today. um, I hope you tune in and join me on this new adventure. Two Geeks and One Mic will be back. I don't know when we will be back, but we will be back. Um, we just have to work some things out and work through our schedules and see when is a good time to just do the podcast with us two again. But this is just something that's just going to be an in-betweener from the time being. So I hope everyone's doing well. Like I said, I did get laid off, but I'm in good spirits. I have a couple of prospects coming up and I have a upcoming interview, so fingers crossed, send prayers and good vibes to your girl, and I greatly appreciate it. We're gonna get started with a couple of news stories that came across my desk. Tomb Raider developer lays off nearly 30 more devs. This is courtesy of the Game Rant. Crystal Dynamics, the Tomb Raider franchise on again, off again developer since 2003, has announced the termination of nearly 30 more developer jobs in a reorganized overhaul of its teams. The job cuts mark the third time Crystal Dynamics has reduced the size of its developer workforce so far in 2025, and fan concerns over its announced upcoming Tomb Raider games are starting to grow again. The first Tomb Raider game was launched in 1996 under the development of Core Design. Developmental control of the live action adventure game franchise has changed hands many times since then, with Asphere, Eidos Montreal, and Square Enix Montreal all receiving developer credits. But Crystal Dynamics had the longest runs, serving as developer from 2003 to 2017 and again from 2021 until the present, with its next planned Tomb Raider project still under development with no clear release date. Though the franchise has achieved long-standing success over nearly three full decades, Crystal Dynamics has now announced its third round of layoffs in less than 8 months. A new post on the company's official LinkedIn page states that nearly 30 more jobs have been cut across a variety of departments and projects as Crystal Dynamics reorganizes and plans for the future. In a section addressing the player base, the announcement states that the painful choices made in terminating employees will ultimately optimize the next Tomb Raider game, which is being published by Amazon Games. Crystal Dynamics has stated that it will be offering support and resources to aid layoff employees in the transition out of the company. Well, I hope this doesn't affect the rollout of Tomb Raider. It's been a while since I played it. But I hope and pray that the developers that were laid off find employment elsewhere. I know it sucks getting reason because it's getting close to the holiday season, and that cut and that lack of pay, it's just going to be tight for a lot of people. I do hope that the developers that did get cut get some type of severance package to help them out while they seek employment elsewhere. The next story that I have on my desk is from Game Rant again. It is Valve officially reveals next gen Steam machine. In somewhat unexpected move, Steam Deck creator Valve has just announced a new Steam machine, a home console built around Steam OS. This is the famed gaming company's second swing at a home gaming platform. As the first Steam machine launched in 2015 to poor sales, the console was mostly wiped from Steam stores just a few years later in 2018. The previous failure might come as something of a surprise considering the overwhelming success of the Steam Deck, Valve's breakout portable gaming device. The Steam Deck, along with the Steam OLED premium model, can be considered partially responsible for the explosion in portable or hybrid gaming PCs over the past few years, a hardware trend that even Microsoft has begun to partake in via the raw Xbox Ally and Xbox branded handheld. However, the Steam machine is targeting a notably different hardware category. Now, I've heard good things about the Steam Deck. I'm actually working on getting me one probably for a Christmas or birthday present. Um, but the but the Steam Machine console, I'm not quite too sure about it because I know they tried the Steam Machine in the past and there was a lot of complications and problems with it. So hopefully they worked out the bugs for this one so it can be a little bit more successful. Valve describes the Steam Machine as being over 6 times more powerful than the Steam Deck, with hardware specifications that will allow it to support 4K gaming at 60 FPS and ray tracing. Its semi-custom AMD architecture allows for AMD FSR upscaling, which should hopefully facilitate better graphics and performance. The Steam Machine will not feature DLSS or other upscaling software, at least in this model. The Steam Deck's dynamic hardware scheduling is one of its greatest tricks, adjusting minimal VRAM for ideal performance and power usage across different games. So it will be interesting to see how these specs are defined in the context of similar computational maneuvers in the Steam Machine. Now, the specs for the Steam Machine, the CPU is a semi-custom AMD Zen 4 6C. The GPU is a semi-custom AMD RNA 3. Supports 4K gaming at 60 frames per second with FSR. Ray tracing supported. Um, comes in a 512 gigabyte and 2 terabyte SSD models. Has a micro SD card slot for expanded storage and portable catalog. Internal power supply. AC power 110 to 240 volts. So definitely they did beef it up some and compared to what it was previously, this may be a great improvement. I'm gonna have to look into this a little bit more, see if I might purchase it. Okay, on to the next. There's a few book releases coming out. Calabasas, a deluxe limited edition from R.F. Kwong at $35. Um, in case some of y'all don't know what this book is about, it's about a story of a hero's descent into the underworld. Alice Law has only ever had one goal to become one of the brightest minds in the field of magic. She has sacrificed everything to make a reality her pride, her health, her love life, and most definitely her sanity. All to work with Professor Jacob Grimes at Cambridge, the greatest magician in the world. That is, until he dies in a magical accident that could possibly be her fault. Grimes is now in hell and she's going after him because his recommendation could hold her very future in his now incorporeal hands, and even death is not going to stop the pursuit of her dreams, nor will the fact that her rival, excuse me, Peter Murdoch, has come to the very same conclusion, with nothing but the gates of Orpheus and Dante to guide them, enough chalk to draw the pentagrams necessary for their spells, and the burning desire to make all the academic trauma mean anything. They set off across hell to save a man they don't even like. But hell is not like the storybooks say. Magic isn't always the answer, and there is something in Alice and Peter's past that could forge them into the perfect allies or lead them to their doom. Uh, R.F. Kuang, or Rebecca Kuang, is the number one New York Times and number one Sunday Times bestselling author of the Poppy War trilogy, Babel and Arcane History, and Yellowface. Her work has won the Nebula, Locust, Crawford, and British Book Awards. A Marshall Scholar, she has an MPhil in Chinese Studies from Cambridge and an MSc in Contemporary Chinese Studies from Oxford. She is now pursuing a PhD in East Asian Languages and Literature at Yale, where she studies diaspora, contemporary Sinophone literature, and Asian American literature. This book is on my wish list. I'm definitely going to get it. I don't know if I'm going to get the deluxe limited edition, although it does look cool. I'm definitely going to get this book. The next book release is What Fury Brings. It's from the Wrath and Fury. It's the first book of that series. It's $31.99. The description is equally brutal, hot, and provocative. Um, the number one New York Times bestselling author Trisha Levenseller makes her adult debut in What Fury Brings, a sexy, empowering romantasy featuring a warrior general who must kidnap and train a husband in order to take her rightful place as queen. A description of this book is let's get something clear, Prince. I have claimed you. That means you belong to me now. There's a shortage of men in the kingdom of Amara. After failed rebellion against the matriarchy, most noblemen in the country are dead. Now the women of Amara must obtain their husbands, should they want one, by kidnapping them from other kingdoms. Alara, a warrior princess vying for the throne, is determined to prove her worth by kidnapping a husband, but not just any husband. To outmaneuver her treacherous cousin, she needs the best. Fortunately, the second born prince of their greatest enemy is widely known for both his looks and his sweet, docile temperament. He is the perfect choice to secure her claim to the throne. Sonoas, heir to the kingdom of Brutus, has nothing but contempt for the idea of a society run by women. Trained from birth to fight, lead, and follow in his father's overbearing footsteps, his path has always been set, until he takes his younger brother's place in a drunken prank and finds himself kidnapped, carted off to the American palace, and informed that he is to become the husband of Queen Potential Alara. Sanos needs to escape before anyone learns his real identity, but the more he gets to know his captor, the less sure he is of what he truly wants. I'm not into romantasy like that, but after reading that description, I might have to take a peek. I might. I'm not so sure, but I might. The next book that I came across is Red City, a part of their new Alchemist series. Is book one. It's by Marie Lu, and it's $29.99. Uh, the description of this book is The Godfather Meets the Magicians, and the sweeping adult debut from number one New York Times bestselling author Marie Lu. Perfect for fans of V.I. Schwab, Red City is a dark, deadly contemporary fantasy of magical warfare, star-crossed ambition, and the pursuit of perfection at any cost, set in a glittering alternative Los Angeles. Alchemy is the hidden art of transformation, an exclusive power wielded by crime syndicates that market it to the world's elites in the form of sand, a drug that enhances those who takes it into a more perfect version of themselves, more beautiful, more charismatic, simply more. Among the gleaming skyscrapers and the rolling foothills of Angel City, alchemy is controlled by two rival syndicates. For years, Grand Central and Luminez have been balanced on a razor's edge between polite negotiation and outright violence. But when two childhood friends step into the delicate equations, the city and the path of their lives will be irrevocably transformed. Excuse me. The daughter of a poor single mother, Sam would do anything to claw her way into the ranks of the Grand Central in search for a better life. Plucked away from his family as a boy to become a Luminez apprentice, Ari is one of the syndicate's brightest rising stars. Once they might have loved each other, but as the two alchemists face off across opposite sides of an ever escalating conflict, ambition becomes power, loyalty becomes lies, and no transformation may be perfect enough for them to both survive the upcoming war. Okay, I'm gonna have to get this. Again, I'm not the biggest fantasy reader, but I like The Magicians and I love The Godfather, so I might have to read this one. Now we have some upcoming movies. We have The Carpenter's Son that was released today. It's a limited release. It's supposed to be a horror version of Christ. The description of this movie is a remote village in Roman era Egypt explodes into spiritual warfare when a carpenter, his wife, and their child are targeted by supernatural forces in The Carpenter's Son. Joseph, played by Nicolas Cage, Mary, played by FKA Twigs, and their teenage son Jesus, played by Noah Yupe, have lived for years under threat, clinging to their faith and traditions. But a stopover in a small settlement unleashes growing chaos when a mysterious stranger tries to entice young Jesus to abandon his devout father's rules. With every pull of temptation, the boy is lured into a forbidden world. As a terrified Joseph realizes that a demonic power is at work, violent, unnatural events inexplicably follow Jesus, and he begins to experience nightmarish visions of the future. Finally, he learns the fearsome truth about his new playmate, as well as the child's real name, Satan. Some people say that this might be is borderline blasphemous, but I might watch it if it's released in my area. I might watch it because I've seen different depictions, but I watched different depictions of the story of Jesus and Mary and Joseph, but never in a horror aspect. So this is new and this is different. So I might have to give it a peek. The next movie that is coming out is called The Disinvited. It is being released on November 18th. The description of this movie is against his or anyone else's better judgment. Carl decides to crash an event where he is no longer welcome, setting off a day filled with betrayal, violence, heartache, and exes who should never get back together. When Carl discovers he isn't the only unwanted guest in the desert, he is forced to decide whether to save himself or risk everything for those who have wronged him. I'm gonna need to see a trailer for this because this the description that I just read. It doesn't seem interesting, so I might look at a trailer later on today to see if it's worth a peek. The next movie that's coming out on February 13th, 2026 is called Cold Storage. It follows Tea Cake and Naomi, two employees at a self storage facility built atop a former military base whose night shift transformed into a nightmare when a government sealed parasitic fungus escapes from the underground levels. Why does every horror movie have to deal with a fungus or some type of parasitic creature? As temperature rises, the microorganism unleashes its brain controlling, body bursting mayhem on anything it passes. The duo must join forces with a weathered bioterror operative to contain the threat before it triggers humanity's extinction. This seems like something that might be funny as hell, so I might watch it. I like a good horror comedy. I do enjoy it, and it seemed like one of them. The next movie is Silent Night, Deadly Night. Now, those of you that is familiar with the 80s version of this movie, this is a remake. It's a different retelling. It comes out December 12th of this year. It is the description of this story of this movie is when Billy witnessed his parents' grisly murder on Christmas Eve at the hands of Santa, it ignites a lifelong mission to spread holiday fear. Every Christmas, he dons the jolly red suit and delivers a blood soaked massacre to feed his twisted sense of justice. This Christmas Eve, Billy wants to know, have you been naughty? Now, I've seen the Silent Night, Deadly Night movies. I've seen the first three. I think there's four or five in total. I might give this a watch because I enjoyed the first original movie. So I'm going to see if it lives up to the name. And the last movie that is crossed my desk is The Housemaid. It comes out December 19th of this year. Um, the description of this movie is trying to escape her past. Millie accepts a job as a live-in housemaid for the wealthy Nina and Andrew Winchester. But what begins as a dream job quickly unravels into something far more dangerous. A sexy, seductive game of secrets, scandal, and power. Behind the Winchester's closed doors lies a world of shocking twists that will leave you guessing until the very end. Now, this is based off a Freedom McFadden book. I have never read anything from Freedom McFadden, but I might watch it, and if it's good, I might read the book. If I definitely make up my mind, I definitely will update y'all on that. And the last thing that I have, usually on the Two Geeks One Mic podcast, I do a historical segment, and I've been holding on to this his piece of history. It's been on my desk for a while. I do humbly apologize for that. It's about the Know Nothing Party, and I think it's only fair if I read it on this segment. It's so join me as I unravel the fascinating story of the Know Nothing Party, a political movement that shook the 19th century. America, with its nativist ideals and secretive ways. But uh, we're not just going to discuss the past. We'll explore how the echoes of this controversial chapter resonates in today's political landscape. So whether you're a history buff, a curious mind, or just here for the drama, you're in the right place. So let's dive in. The Know Nothing Party was an old stock nativist political movement in the United States in the 1850s. Members of the movement were required to say, I know nothing, whether they were asked about its specifics, excuse me, by outsiders, providing the group with its colloquial name. Supporters of the Know Nothing movement believe that all alleged Romanist conspiracy to subvert civil and religious liberty in the United States was being hatched by Catholics. Therefore, they sought to politically organize native born Protestants in defense of their traditional religious and political values. The Know Nothing movement is remembered for this theme because Protestants fear that Catholic priests and bishops will control a large block of voters. In most places, the ideology and influence of the Know Nothing movement lasted only 1 or 2 years before it disintegrated due to weak and inexperienced local leaders, a lack of publicly proclaimed national leaders, and a deep split over the issue of slavery. In parts of the South, the party did not emphasize cat well Lord Jesus, I'm tongue tied. Anti-Catholicism, and frequently as it emphasized in the North, and it stressed a neutral position on slavery, but it became the main alternative to the dominant Democratic Party. The Know Nothing supplemented their xenophobic views with populist appeals. At the state level, the party was, in some cases, progressive in its stances on issues of labor rights and the need for more political spending, and furnished support from an expansion of the rights of women, the regulation of industry, and support of measures which were designed to improve the state of working people. It was a forerunner for the temperance movement in the United States. The Know Nothing movement briefly emerged as a major political party in the form of the American Party. The collapse of the Whig Party after the passage of the Kansas-Nebraska Act left opening for the emergence of a new major political party in opposition to the Democratic Party. The Know Nothing movement managed to elect Congressman Nathaniel P. Banks of Massachusetts and several other individuals in the office in the 1854 elections, and it subsequently coalesced into a new political party, which was known as the American Party. Particularly in the South, the American Party served as a vehicle for politicians who opposed the Democrats. Many of the American Party members and supporters also hoped that it would stake out a middle ground between the pro slavery positions of the Democratic politicians and the radical anti slavery positions of the rapidly emerging Republican Party. The American Party nominated former President Millard Fillmore in the 1856 presidential elections, but he kept quiet about his membership in it, and he personally refrained from supporting the Know Nothing movement activities and ideology. Fillmore received 21.5% of the popular vote in the 1856 presidential election, finishing behind the Democratic and Republican nominees. Henry Winter Davis, an active Know Nothing, was elected on the American Party ticket to Congress from Maryland. He told the Congress that un-American Irish Catholic immigrants were to blame for the recent election of Democrat James Buchanan as president, stating, "The recent election has developed in an aggravated form every evil against the American Party protested. Foreign allies have decided the government of the country, men naturalized in thousands on the eve of the election. Again, in the fierce struggle for supremacy, men have forgotten the ban which the Republic puts on the intrusion of religious influence on the political arena. These influences have brought vast multitudes of foreign born citizens to the polls, ignorant of American interests, without American feelings, influenced by foreign sympathies to vote on American affairs, and those who have vote, in point of fact, accomplish the present result. The party entered a period of rapid decline after Fillmore's loss. In 1857, the Dred Scott versus Sanford pro-slavery decision of the Supreme Court of the United States further galvanized opposition to slavery in the North, causing many former Know-Nothings to join the Republicans. The remnants of the American Party largely joined the Constitutional Union Party in 1860, and they disappeared during the American Civil War. In the spring of 1854, the Know Nothings carried Boston and Salem, Massachusetts, and other New England cities. They swept the state of Massachusetts in the fall of 1854. Their biggest victory, the Whig candidate for mayor of Philadelphia, editor Robert T. Conrad, was soon revealed as a know-nothing, as he promised to crack down on crime and close saloons on Sundays and only appoint native-born Americans to office. He won the election by a landslide. In Washington, D.C., Know-Nothing candidate John T. Towers defeat incumbent Mayor John Walker Maury, triggering opposition of such a high proportion that the Democrats, Whigs, and Free Soilers in the Capitol united as the anti-Know Nothing Party. In New York, where James Harper had been elected mayor of New York City as an American Republican almost a decade before, the Know Nothing candidate Daniel Ullman came in third in a four-way race for governor by gathering 26% of the vote. After the 1854 elections, they exerted a large amount of political influence in Maine, Indiana, Pennsylvania, and California. But historians are unsure about the accuracy of this information due to the secrecy of the party, because all parties were in turmoil and the anti slavery and prohibition issues overlapped with nepotism in complex and confusing ways. They helped elect Stephen Palfrey Webb as mayor of San Francisco, and they also helped elect J. Neely Johnston as governor of California. Nathaniel P. Banks was elected to Congress as a Know Nothing candidate, but after a few months he aligned with Republicans. A coalition of Know Nothings, Republicans also Republicans and other members of Congress opposed the Democratic Party, elected Banks to the position of Speaker of the House. The results of the 1854 election were so favorable to the Know Nothings, up to then an informal movement with no centralized organization, that they formed officially as a political party called the American Party, which attracted many members by then nearly defunct Whig Party as well as a significant number of Democrats. Memberships in the American Party increased dramatically from 50,000 to an estimated 1 million plus in a matter of months during that year. The historian Tyler Ambinder concluded the key to Know Nothing success in 1854 was the collapse of the second party system, brought about primarily by the demise of the Whig Party. The Whig Party, weakened for years by eternal dissent and chronic factionalism, was nearly destroyed by the Kansas Nebraska Act. Growing anti party sentiment, fueled by anti slavery sentiment, as well as temperance, nepotism, also contributed to the disintegration of the party system. The collapsing second party system gave the Know Nothings a much larger pool of potential converts than what was available to previous Navitist organizations, allowing the order to succeed where older Navitist groups have failed. In San Francisco, a Know Nothing chapter was founded in 1854 to oppose Chinese immigration. Members included a judge of the state Supreme Court who ruled that no Chinese person could testify as witness against a white man in court. The Know Nothing Party tried passing multiple bills in Congress that would hinder the acceptance of certain immigrants into the United States, but the laws were never passed since the party was slowly declining during 1855. In spring of 1855, Know Nothing candidate Levi Boone was elected mayor of Chicago and barred all immigrants from city jobs. Abraham Lincoln strongly opposed to the principles of the Know Nothing movement but did not denounce it publicly because he needed the votes of its membership to form a successful anti-slavery coalition in Illinois. Ohio was the only state where the party gained strength in 1855. Their Ohio success seems to have come from winning over immigrants, especially German American Lutherans and Scots Irish Presbyterians, both hostile to Catholicism. In Alabama, Know Nothings were a mix of former Whigs, discontented Democrats, and other political outsiders who favored state aid to build more railroads. Virginia attracted national attention in its tempestuous 1855 gubernatorial election. Democrat Henry Alexander Wise won by convincing state voters that Know Nothings were in bed with Northern abolitionists. With a victory by Wise, the movement began to collapse in the South. Know Nothing scored victories in the northern state elections in 1854, winning control of the legislature in Massachusetts and polling 40% of the vote in Pennsylvania. Although most of the new immigrants lived in the North, resentment and anger against them was national, and the American Party initially polled well in the South, attracting the votes of many former Southern Whigs. The party's name gained wide but brief popularity. Know Nothing candy, tea, and toothpicks appeared, and the name was given to stagecoaches, buses, and ships. In Trescott, Maine, a ship owner dubbed his new 700-ton freighter Know Nothing. The party was occasionally referred to contemporaneously in a slightly pejorative shortening, Canism. Fearful that Catholics were flooding the polls with non-citizens, local activists threatened to stop them. On August 6, 1855, rioting broke out in Louisville, Kentucky, during a hotly contested race for the office of governor. 22 were killed and many injured. This bloody Monday riot was not the only violent riot by Know Nothings against Catholics in 1855. In Baltimore, the mayoral elections of 1856, 1857, and 1858 were all marred by violence and well-founded accusations of ballot rigging by the Know Nothings. In the coastal town of Ellsworth, Maine, in 1854, Know Nothings were associated with the tarring and feathering of the Jesuit priest Johannes Baptist. They also burned down a Catholic church in Bath, Maine. The Massachusetts Know Nothings did advance attacks on the civil rights of Irish Catholic immigrants. After this, state courts lost the power to process applications for citizenship, and public schools had to require compulsory daily reading of the Protestant Bible, which the Navitists were sure would transform the Catholic children. The governor disbanded the Irish militias and replaced state jobs with Protestants. However, Know Nothing lawmakers failed to reach the two-thirds majority needed to pass a state constitutional amendment to restrict voting and office holding to men who had resided in Massachusetts for at least 21 years. The legislature then called on Congress to raise the requirement for naturalization from 5 years to 21 years, but Congress never acted. The most dramatic move by the Know Nothing legislator was to appoint an investigating committee designed to prove widespread sexual immorality underway in Catholic convents. The press had a field day following the story, especially when it was discovered that the key reformer was using community funds to pay for a prostitute. The legislature shut down its committee, ejected the reformer, and saw its investigation become a laughingstock. The Know Nothing scored a landslide in New Hampshire in 1855. They won 51% of the vote, including 94% of the anti slavery Free Soilers and 79% of the Whigs, plus 15% of the Democrats and 24% of those who abstained in the previous election for governor the year before. In full control of the legislature, the Know Nothings enacted their entire agenda. According to Lex Renda, they battled traditionalism and promoted rapid modernization. They extended the waiting period for citizenship to slow down the growth of Irish power. They reformed the state courts. They expanded the number and power of banks. They strengthened corporations. They defeated a proposed 10-hour workday law. They reformed the tax system, increased state spending on public schools, set up a system to build high schools, prohibited the sale of liquor, and denounced the expansion of slavery in the western states. The Whigs and Free Soil parties had collapsed in New Hampshire in 1854 to 1855. In 1855 fall elections, the Know Nothing again swept in New Hampshire against the Democrats and the small Republican Party. When the Know Nothing American Party collapsed in 1856 and merged with the Republicans, New Hampshire now had a two-party system, with the Republicans edging out the Democrats. The Know Nothing also dominated politics in Rhode Island, where in 1855 William W. Hoppin held the governorship, and 5 out of every 7 votes went to the party, which dominated the Rhode Island legislature. Local newspapers such as the Providence Journal fueled anti Irish and anti Catholic sentiment. David T. Gleason notes that many Irish Catholics in the South feared that the arrival of the Know Nothing movement portended a serious threat. He argues the Southern Irish who had seen the dangers of Protestant bigotry in Ireland had the distinct feeling that the Know Nothings were an American manifestation of that phenomenon. Every migrant, no matter how settled or prosperous, also worried that this virulent strain of nativism threatened his or her hard earned gains in the South and integration into its society. Immigrants' fears were unjustified, however, because the national debate over slavery and its expansion, not nativism or anti Catholicism, was the major reason for the Know Nothing success in the South. The Southerners who supported the Know Nothing did so, for the most part, because they thought the Democrats who favored the expansion of slavery might break up the Union. In Virginia, the Know Nothing movement came under sharp attack from both established parties. Democrats published a 12,000-word point-by-point denunciation of Know Nothingism. The Democrats nominated ex-Whig Henry A. Wise for governor. He denounced the lousy, godless, Christless Know Nothings, and instead he advocated an expanded program for internal improvements. Despite the National Party's anti Catholicism, the Know Nothing found strong support in Louisiana, including in largely Catholic New Orleans. The Whig Party in Louisiana had a strong anti immigrant bent, making the Native American Party the natural home for Louisiana former Whigs. Louisiana Know Nothings were pro slavery and anti immigrant, but in contrast to the National Party, refused to include a religious test for membership. Instead, the Louisiana Know Nothings insisted that loyalty to a church should not supersede loyalty to the Union. Similarly, the broader Know Nothing movement viewed the Louisiana Catholics, and in particular the Creole elite who supported the American Party, as adhering to a Galician Catholicism, and therefore opposed to papal authority over matters of the state. The party declined rapidly in the North after 1855, in part due to the party's rejection of a clear anti slavery platform. During the presidential election during the presidential election of 1856, the party was bitterly divided over slavery. The main faction supported the ticket of the presidential nominee Millard Fillmore and vice president nominee Jackson Donaldson. In Massachusetts, for example, the American Party ran Republican candidate John C. Fremont and its presidential nominee. Fillmore, a former president, had been a Whig, and Donaldson was the nephew of Democratic President Andrew Jackson, so the ticket was designed to appeal to loyalists from both major parties, winning 23% of the popular vote and carrying one state, Maryland, with the 8 electoral votes. Fillmore did not win enough votes to block Democrat James Buchanan from the White House. Many were appalled by the Know Nothings. While Abraham Lincoln never publicly attacked the Know Nothings, whose votes he needed, he expressed his own disgust with the political party in a private letter to Joshua Speed written August 24th, 1855. I am not a Know Nothing, that is certain. How could I be? How could anyone who abhors the oppression of Negroes be in favor of degrading classes of white people? Our progress in degeneracy appears to me to be pretty rapid. As a nation, we begin declaring that all men are created equal. We are now practically read all men are created equal except Negroes. When the Know Nothings get control, it will be all men are created equal except Negroes and foreigners and Catholics. When it comes to this, I should prefer immigrating to some country where they make no pretense over loving liberty, to Russia, for instance, where the despotism can be taken pure without the base of alloy hypocrisy. Historian Allen Nevins, writing about the turmoil preceding the American Civil War, states that Miller Fillmore was never a know nothing nor a Nativist. Fillmore was out of the country when the presidential nomination came and had not been consulted about running. Nevins further states Fillmore was not a member of the party. He had never attended an American Know Nothing gathering, but by no spoken or written word had he indicated a subscription to the American Party tenets. However, Fillmore had sent a letter for publication in 1855 that explicitly denounced immigration influence in elections, and Fillmore stated that the American Party was the only hope of forming a true national party, which shall ignore this constant and distracting agitation of slavery. After the Supreme Court's controversial Dred Scott versus Sanford ruling in 1857, most of the anti-slavery members of the American Party joined the Republican Party. The pro-slavery wing of the American Party remained strong on the local and state levels in a few southern states. But by the 1860 election, there were no longer serious national political movement. Most of their remaining members supported the Constitutional Union Party in 1860. The Nativist anti-Catholic spirit of the Know Nothing movement was revived by the later political movements such as the American Protective Association of the 1890s and the Second Ku Klux Klan of the 1920s. In the late 19th century, Democrats called the Republicans Know Nothings in order to secure the votes of Germans in the Bennett Law campaign in Wisconsin in 1890. A similar culture war took place in Illinois in 1892, where Democrat John Peter Altgeld denounced the Republicans. The spirit which enacted the Alien and Sedition laws, the spirit which actuated the Know Nothing Party, the spirit which is forever harping about the foreign born citizen and trying to abridge his privileges is too deeply seated in the party. The aristocratic and know nothing principle has been circulating in his system so long that it will require more than one somersault to shake the poison out of its bones. Some historians and journalists have found parallels in the birther and Tea Party movements. Excuse me. Seeing the prejudice against the Latino immigrants and the hostility towards Islam as a similarity. Historian Steve Fraser and Joshua B. Freeman lend their opinion to the Know Nothing and the Tea Party movements, arguing Tea Party populism should also be should also be thought of as a kind of identity politics of the right, almost entirely white and disproportionately male and older. Tea Party advocates express a visceral anger and the cultural and to some extent political eclipse of an American in which people who looked and thought like them were dominant. A black president, a female Speaker of the House, and a gay head of House Financial Services Committee are evidently almost too much to bear. Though the anti immigration and Tea Party movements so far have remained largely distinct, they share an emotional grammar, the fear of displacement. Know Nothing has become a provocative slur, suggesting that the opponent is both naivetous and ignorant. George Wallace's 1968 presidential campaign was said by Time to be under the Neo Know Nothing banner. Fareed Zakaria wrote that politicians who encourage Americans to fear foreigners were becoming modern incarnations of the Know Nothings. In 2006, an editorial in the Weekly Standard by neoconservative William Kristol accused populist Republicans of turning the GOP into an anti-immigration know-nothing party. The lead editorial of the May 20th, 2007 issue of the New York Times on proposed immigration bill referred to this generation's know-nothings. An editorial written by Timothy Egan in the New York Times on August 27, 2010, entitled Building a Nation of Know-Nothings, discussed the birther movement, which falsely claimed that Barack Obama was not a natural-born United States citizen, which is a requirement for the office of President of the United States. In 2016 United States presidential election, a number of commentators and politicians compared candidate Donald Trump to the Know Nothing Party due to his anti-immigration policies. The notable Know Nothings were the following: Nathaniel P. Banks, Speaker of the United States of House of Representatives from Massachusetts and Union Army General; Levi Boone, Mayor of Chicago; John Wilkes Booth; John Era Bujulini; John J. Crittenden; Henry Winter Davis; Andrew Jackson Donaldson; Millard Fillmore; James Green Hardy; Samuel Hinks; Thomas Holliday Hicks; William W. Halpin; Sam Houston; James Neely Johnson; Anthony Kennedy; Louis Charles Levin; Charles S. Moorhead; Samuel Morse; William Poole; Thaddeus Stevens, Thomas Swan, Stephen Palfrey Webb, and Huey Wilson. In popular culture, in pop culture, the fictional Confederation of American Natives Party was represented in the 2002 film Gangs of New York, led by William Bill the Butcher Cutling, the fictionalized version of the real life Know Nothing leader William Poole. The Know Nothing also played a prominent role in the historical fiction novel Shaman by novelist Noah Gordon. I'd like to thank you all for tuning in to this episode of geekyquel News. I don't know how often I would do this, so turn on your post notifications so you'll be notified when I go live. Thank you so much for tuning in, and goodbye.